Hey, welcome to Mullen Stock. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on post notifications by hitting the bell so you never miss any of our uploads. And also remember that this is not a financial advice video. Now let's start. So when it comes down to Mullen, a lot of people are just short-term focused too much. So even what's happening tomorrow, what is happening next week? Whereas if you are a true investor, you're thinking bigger picture. So this video, I want to talk more. So even what is happening, for instance, in the remaining part of 2023 for Mullen. When it comes down to the M3, we already do know that they're going to be starting production of that in July of 2023, which in general is a fairly big accomplishment. I would still rather have seen, for instance, the 8-on-1 be starting to have production. And so, in reality, with the fact that they are starting to produce the M3, it is fair to assume that they can easily just convert it and start to produce the M1. So I do feel that this is going to be the next big operational update for Mullen, is that they're going to be starting the M1. Because even on a side note, I still do feel that there is a little bit more of a higher demand. For instance, for the M1 versus the M3. I personally feel that they're just doing the M3 just to not really conflict with Bollinger that I'm going to touch on in a second. But there is two, so the campus. And also there is the cargo van. So two different variations. They have delivered a handful of vehicles. Of course, by no means what a lot of us were under the impression that was going to happen. But still, it's a lot of pre-existing ELMS inventory. And based on a lot of their previous financials, they have around $6.9 million in pre-existing ELMS inventory. So again, it's good the fact that they're getting it out, but they still do generally need to start production of the M1 itself. Because just to put it in perspective, for instance, what even Randy Marion said in their interview is the fact that why they like the M1 is because there's not much competition in that sector. But it does look like a lot of companies are starting to really pump out a lot of vehicles. They realize that there's a lot of profit to be had in the commercial sector. So a lot of companies are starting to enter that, as you can even see based on Ford and their lineup. So they do have the chassis cab. So kind of comparable to, for instance, the M3 very close based on the price point. Because the M3 is $68,500, and this is $68,700, the cargo van. Of course, it can't be really compared to the M1, but in theory, if a company is going to be wanting a good reputable vehicle, they're going to be seeing this price point $71,000. And of course, how can anyone argue with the M1? Because M1 is $27,500, that is after the tax incentive. This is why I do feel that there's a huge opportunity for Mullen. They just cannot be dormant. They can't just wait for the M1 just to produce itself. They need to actually be on top of their operations. But, beside the point, I do feel that this is going to be the next big operational update for Mullen. And when it comes down to it, though, there's also going to be Bollinger. So Bollinger has some pretty good vehicles. I've already done a lot of videos just on this company in MUM itself. More specifically the B4, because I used to previously invest in a company called Hylian. So I know that this sector itself is very much largely untapped in North America. Europe is very much dominated by Volvo. But in North America, which of course I think that's Bollinger's intention to kind of hit that market and dominate that market, this should be fairly successful. So of course, going back over here though, one thing that I have noted or seen at least is, for instance, looking on their Twitter page, of course, there's a lot of different other social medias out there, but on Twitter, they kind of went dormant on April the 19th. But prior to that, though, they were very, very active. So almost every day, every second day, something like that, as far as posts, but they kind of went dormant on the 19th. I'm not necessarily sure why. There was no real news or any updates, but there hasn't been any updates as well on their website. Whereas Mullen itself, they have been updating their website quite a few times. Almost every second week there's a new addition, subtraction, things like that. Whereas, like I said on Bollinger, it's kind of silent. So it's one of those things that I really want them to not fall by the wayside because they do have some fairly successful vehicles. And just to put in perspective, so these are two of their recent earnings, and it goes over the restricted cash. So this right here is a good representation of basically what Mullen was before Bollinger. So they had around $30 million in escrow. That is for the whole Bollinger transaction. You also do see that there was $289,000 in refundable deposits. So clearly that is associated to, obviously, Mullen vehicles. But let's look at their next earnings. That does incorporate and adds Bollinger to obviously their balance sheet and so forth. So restricted cash is now at $39.5 or $39.3. So of course, if you subtract the 30, because that's still an escrow, and of course the 289. So, just for argument's sake, rounding that up to 31 million, then there is still an additional, roughly around 8.3 million in reservations that did come from simply enough Bollinger. So this is where I'm getting at, is that there is a lot of big demand behind the scenes for these vehicles. Of course, between these actual earnings, the M5 might have gotten some additional reservations, but not enough for that 8.3 million by any means whatsoever. Because I believe, if I remember correctly, it's only $100 for a deposit. That is it. And Mullen is capping it at 25,000 reservations. So again, it doesn't add up. That means there is, like I said, a lot of big demand behind the scenes for Bollinger vehicles. So in reality, I don't see the B1 or the B2 start production anytime soon, at least in 2023. That most likely will be rolled out into 2024. But Bollinger has committed and said that the B4, for instance, is going to be in 2023, starting production, I believe, in the tail end of Q3 or early Q4 for 2023. So I do feel that that would be the next chronological step as far as operations that Mullen would be able to benefit from. So this is why I do feel that they are going that route as far as pushing out the M3. So there's a campus and then there's the muln 3. So this is why I do feel, for instance, that they are doing the M3 production right now. Even though there might be a little bit less demand for the M3 compared to the M1, I think they're just trying to not overlap it with this. So of course the B4 right here. Guys, that's all we have for you today. What is your opinion about Mullen stock? Get involved and let us know in the comments down below. Thank you for watching.